Hi everyone, and welcome to The Neverending Story, The Cultural Evolution of Narratives, Part 1. This is the first of two introductory lectures which will introduce the topic of this module. We'll be talking about the importance of narratives and stories to humans throughout history, and also how cultural evolution theory has provided a valuable framework through which researchers have investigated narratives and stories. This first lecture is by me, Joe Stubbersfield, and Jamie Tarani. It was a dark and stormy night. No one knows when the first story was told, who told it, or what it was. But it could have been around a fire. Leisner's investigation into the topics of conversation of hunter-gatherers in southern Africa found that daylight conversation focused on day-to-day practicalities. The nitty-gritty of egalitarianism, food sharing, kinship dues, and land tenure were thus regulated by day. Night talk was critical for transmitting the big picture of the workings of marriage, kinship, exchange, and cosmology. These nighttime conversations around the fire focused on topics that evoked the imagination, primarily stories. These could be myths and legends, but also more down-to-earth tales, like funny stories about relationships or hunting exploits. Virtually all hunter-gatherer societies feature storytelling in some form. And it's easy to imagine that humans have been telling each other stories around a fire for tens of thousands of years. Indirect evidence from stone tools, beads, and ochre suggests symbolic expression dates back around 100,000 years. And we can imagine that we've been telling stories to each other for at least as long as this. The lion-headed figurine pictured here was carved from a mammoth tusk 35 to 40,000 years ago, and is interpreted as showing a figure that was important to the mythology of humans during the Upper Paleolithic in the area in which it was found. It's hard to imagine that there wasn't some kind of story or myth behind this lion-headed person, and that it didn't play some kind of important role in the mythology of the people who carved it all those years ago. Australian Dreamtime accounts, the mythology cycle of Aboriginal Australians, probably date back 10,000 years and are still told today. The oldest recorded story we have, the Epic of Gilgamesh, dates back around 5,000 years and features an early example of the flood myth that you might be familiar with through Judeo-Christian mythology, and also early examples of the dragon slayer, so fighting of monsters, and the search for immortality. As a species, humans have an addiction to fiction. Whenever this behavior started, since then we've never stopped. Narratives are a human universal, and no known society lives without stories in some form. They are consumed around the world in a range of different media. These could be oral tales, where one person tells a story to another, or perhaps a group of people. Music and drama, the picture here showing a Japanese Kabuki play. Or literature, this might be through poetry, epic poetry, novels, and also a more recent addition to the narrative form, video games, which are perhaps unique in their interactiveness. Storytelling and attending to stories is automatic and requires very little input. When watching this video of simple shapes, two triangles and a circle and some lines and their movements, as a human, you very easily attribute agency, motivation, feelings to these shapes, seeing them as characters within a story. As they interact with each other, you can perhaps imagine relationships between them. And more importantly, it's very difficult not to attribute some kind of narrative to their interaction. Can you feel the panic as the circle bounces around in the room? And do you feel elated when they escape the triangle and hide from it behind these lines, which maybe you're seeing as a house? This suggests that storytelling is a natural cognitive function, which we call narrativity. Narrativity is organizing experiences and events into a pattern of meaningful relations, suggesting that things happen for a reason, usually through the goals and motivations of agents. So thinking of that video, the attribution of goals and motivations just to those circles and triangles. Narrative aids comprehension and memory, but also excludes and distorts information. Storytelling and narrative play a vital role in how humans perceive the world around us, how we think about our own experiences, our own autobiographical memories, and how we think about other people and our societies. We also know that narratives evolve, and that they're shaped by the selection pressures of human minds and societies. Some stories are the products of incredible lineages. This phylogenetic tree that's shown here is the lineage of two related tales. So the information from this was taken from the Arne Thompson Uther Index, which is a collection of folk tales. And it shows the evolution of two tales, 333, which you're probably familiar with as Red Riding Hood, and 123, which is The Wolf and the Kids. Through his investigation into the cultural evolution of these stories, Jamie Tarani showed that these two tales, which were considered to be separate, actually evolved from a single ancestor, a tale by Aesop. Other stories which have been investigated by Jamie Tarani, such as Beauty and the Beast, have shown to have lineages dating back thousands of years, and these are of course still known and told today. Cultural evolution proposes that culture evolves in a Darwinian sense. This means that it displays variation and goes through the processes of heredity and selection. This module will guide you through the genres of romance, soap opera, fantasy, horror, crime, and more recent types of stories like conspiracy theories and fake news, and show how they reflect the processes of cultural evolution. It will also teach you about the techniques that cultural evolution researchers have used to examine the patterns of distribution of these stories, how they've changed over time, and how they may alter as they're passed from one person to another. Each session will consist of a short video lecture like this one, and also a complementary exercise that you can complete yourself. These exercises will give you greater insight into the research techniques and theories that have been used to better understand the cultural evolution of narratives, and will give you some real hands-on experience doing things like text mining, coding transmission chains, and constructing phylogenetic trees of narratives. They will show how researchers use techniques to examine and understand these processes, and also help answer key questions. What can we learn about the cultural evolution of stories through these research techniques? And what does the evolution of these stories tell us about us? To be continued.